I did.
Camilla breaks royal tradition and leaves Kate and Sophie. In tears, something has changed behind the velvet walls of Buckingham Palace, and it's got Kate and Sophie holding back tears. It all began on a glittering November night in 2024. The setting was the annual Diplomatic Corps reception at Buckingham Palace, a night where tradition meets spectacle. It's usually one of the few chances for the public to see senior royal women dressed in formal gowns, royal orders, and most importantly, tiaras. Expectations were high for Princess Catherine and the Duchess of Edinburgh to make their appearances, but it was Queen Camilla who stole the spotlight, and not just because of her position. As the cameras flashed and dignitaries filed in, Camilla arrived wearing a piece that hadn't been seen in public for over 5 decades. The aquamarine ribbon tiara. This wasn't just any royal jewel. It was a striking, rarely worn piece last photographed in the 1970s, believed to have been quietly shelved during Queen Elizabeth II's reign. For royal watchers, it was a jaw-dropping moment. This wasn't part of Camilla's usual rotation of royal headpieces. For many, it symbolized a shift in power, and it sparked a question. Was Queen Camilla rewriting the rules of royal tradition?
It's lovely
It was
to
quite
see
a
you.
frosty journey.
I bet it
Yeah,
was.
sorry, we're a bit late, I'm afraid.
Perfectly okay. How's His Majesty?
He's fine, thank you very much.
Thank
Looking
you.
forward to getting back to work.
Absolutely. Thank you very much.
Under Queen Elizabeth II's reign, there was a silent rule, a code not written but strictly followed: one woman, one tiara. This wasn't just about jewelry. Each royal woman was assigned 1 or 2 tiaras, typically on loan for life, tied to her identity and rank within the family. The rule was about consistency, legacy, and control. For example, Princess Diana was almost always seen in the Spencer tiara or the Cambridge Lover's Knot. Kate Middleton, once she became the Duchess of Cambridge, regularly wore the Lover's Knot and occasionally the Cartier Halo tiara. Sophie, the Duchess of Edinburgh, became strongly associated with the smaller and more elegant Anthemion tiara. This approach was about more than style. It was part of a larger system of visual messaging. Royals are not supposed to be fashion icons in the Hollywood sense, they're symbols. The tiaras weren't just adornments, they were extensions of the crown's authority, with each piece carrying history, meaning, and hierarchy. Deviating from that system risked confusing or undermining that symbolism. Queen Elizabeth's rulebook ensured that royal appearances felt consistent, controlled, and deeply rooted in tradition. No surprises, no experiments, just continuity. So when Camilla stepped out wearing a tiara that hadn't been seen in 50 years, it didn't just raise eyebrows, it signaled that the old code might no longer apply.
I think the one I enjoyed reading more than anything else.
Camilla's approach to the royal jewel collection is less about individual ownership and more about historical curation. Insiders say she sees the collection not as private family heirlooms reserved for the queen and a select few, but as a shared national legacy that should be seen and appreciated. This idea has already played out in her tiara choices. The Bougeron honeycomb tiara, often referred to as the Gréval tiara, was once seen as her signature, but under Camilla's leadership, it's no longer locked into just her public appearances. She's also pulled from the vault the Queen Mary's Russian fringe and the Delhi Durbar tiara, another massive historic piece rarely seen in public. Even the Queen Alexandra Kokoshnik tiara has been floated as one Camilla could revive. Her choices seem deliberate. By circulating these jewels, she's treating the collection more like a gallery of living history than a closed wardrobe. Critics say it breaks continuity. Supporters argue it breathes life into a collection that's long been hidden. And while it's true that Kate and Sophie's absence at recent tiara events fuels speculation, some royal insiders suggest Camilla's long-term plan may include rotating pieces among senior royal women more freely, but only on her terms and at her timing. In other words, the jewels are still being shared, but the control has shifted. And Camilla's the one holding the key. But what about the women who wore these treasures before her? As Queen Camilla stepped into the spotlight with historic tiaras once thought untouchable, the internet lit up with rumors. People started to speculate. Had Kate been banned from wearing tiaras altogether? Had Sophie been quietly stripped of her jewels? Some interpreted Camilla's solo spotlight as a silent freeze-out, especially when the aquamarine ribbon tiara, which had last been associated with the Queen Mother, suddenly appeared on Camilla's head instead of Sophie's. Fans wondered whether this move was symbolic, a quiet reshuffling of hierarchy that pushed the Princess of Wales and the Duchess of Edinburgh further down the royal pecking order. But those assumptions didn't hold for long. In early 2025, Sophie was spotted wearing the lotus flower tiara, Art Deco piece that had previously been associated with Kate. It was the first time Sophie had ever worn it publicly, and royal watchers quickly noticed the swap. Around the same time, Kate made headlines of her own when she stepped out wearing the Strathmore Rose tiara, a tiara so rarely seen that it hadn't been worn in public since Queen Elizabeth, the Queen Mother's youth. These moments weren't just appearances, they were answers. Instead of being shut out, it looked more like Kate and Sophie were being given new assignments, new stories to tell through their royal jewels. The tiaras weren't being taken, they were being rotated, recontextualized, maybe even reimagined for a new era. And the emotional connection fans have to these tiaras, that's still very real. But sometimes, giving a tiara to another royal woman isn't about punishment, it's about keeping history alive.
He's very touched by all the letters and messages.
I do hope his messages do well, Mum. We're all really sad to hear the news.
Well, he's doing extremely well under the circumstances, and he's very touched by all the letters and messages. You know, all the public has been sent from everywhere. So that's very cheering in a way.
If Camilla's use of historic tiaras suggested a consolidation of power, the full timeline tells a different story. In May 2023, Camilla wore the iconic Girls of Great Britain and Ireland tiara, one of the most recognizable pieces in the royal collection, made famous by Queen Elizabeth. This was significant. Not only did it signal her acceptance into the highest ranks of royal history, but it also opened the door to more public reappearances of major jewels. By November 2023, Princess Catherine stunned the world by wearing the Strathmore Rose tiara. This move was completely unexpected. The tiara hadn't been seen in nearly a century. It was a soft floral piece once worn by the Queen Mother in her early years. For Kate to wear it signaled trust and also a fresh direction. In June 2024, Sophie joined the trend, debuting an emerald tiara many believe is a modern remounting of existing stones. Again, this wasn't a hand-me-down, it was a deliberate choice, a new look for a royal who had quietly earned a strong public presence. Throughout this same period, Camilla continued rotating tiaras, not just wearing the same few. She moved between the Boucheron honeycomb, the Greville emerald kokoshnik, and now the aquamarine ribbon. If this were a game of hoarding power, the pieces wouldn't be changing hands so freely. Rather than a jewel war, we're seeing something else. A tiara renaissance. The vault isn't closing, it's opening wider than it has in decades. So what's really going on behind palace doors? Behind the sparkle, there's strategy. Under King Charles III and Queen Camilla, the monarchy is pushing for a more modern image. This isn't just about PR, it's about redefining what it means to be royal in a world that demands transparency, practicality, and public connection. That push is clearly seen in how the royal jewels are handled. Camilla's decision to pull historic tiaras out of storage isn't random. It fits into a broader theme: make better use of what they already have. It's about sustainability, yes, but also about making the monarchy feel like it belongs to the people again. Experts like Lauren Kiana and Patricia Treble have both pointed out that this isn't about exclusion, it's about practicality. The jewels aren't personal, they're institutional. They don't belong to one queen or one princess, they belong to the crown. So instead of one woman being assigned one tiara for life, we're seeing a more flexible system. Pieces are chosen based on event, outfit, and message. Camilla isn't keeping jewels away from Kate or Sophie, she's simply leading a new style of curation, one where tiaras are seen more often, worn by more women, and tied to more than just tradition. It's not a royal turf war, it's a quiet reinvention.
I think you're putting words into my mouth, as they say. Are you then?
Why?
Would you say that you are or you aren't, though? I am
No,
curious.
I wouldn't. I mean, because I believe that there is a genuine benefit from this particular arrangement.
In countries like Sweden and the Netherlands, sharing and rotating tiaras among multiple royal women has long been the norm. There, tiara culture is less about strict ownership and more about celebrating heritage collectively. Swedish Princess Sophia and Dutch Princess Amalia, for example, often share pieces from their royal vaults, giving different events a fresh look while honoring history. This flexibility keeps the jewels in the spotlight and connects generations. Unlike the UK's past rigidity, where a single woman was closely tied to specific tiaras, these European courts treat their collections as a shared treasure chest. King Charles and Queen Camilla seem to be nudging Britain closer to this model. By encouraging rotation and shared use of the crown jewels, they're modernizing royal traditions and making the monarchy's sparkling legacy more accessible and relevant today. But even with reason and strategy, emotions still run high. Change is never easy, especially when tradition runs deep. Kate's recent surgery kept her away from public engagements, adding a layer of sympathy and concern from the public. Fans noticed her absence from tiara events, fueling speculation about how she's adjusting to these shifts behind the scenes. Sophie, too, faces an emotional adjustment, balancing her evolving roles with new jewels and new expectations. For both women, the changes in tiara assignments aren't just about accessories. They carry personal and symbolic meaning tied to identity and status within the royal family. Public perception reflects this emotional complexity. There's grief for what feels like a fading era, nostalgia for familiar traditions, and resistance to change. Royal fans often voice these feelings, showing how much these jewels represent more than just sparkle. They're a connection to history and continuity. In the end, maybe the crown hasn't dimmed, but just found a new sparkle. Queen Camilla's tiara choices and the vault's reopening point to a larger shift toward inclusivity, transparency, and a revival of royal history. It's a move away from rigid tradition toward a dynamic and shared heritage. Yet the emotional weight of centuries-old customs still lingers in the hearts of royals and fans alike. The jewels now tell new stories while honoring old ones. Do you think Camilla is rewriting history or reviving it? Should tiaras be shared among royal women or remain sacred symbols of personal legacy? Sound off in the comments and don't forget to subscribe for more royal revelations.